we will get feedback. Right, we'll get
and here we are. We are live on Sunday evening. What are we looking at? July 8th already? Wow. What happened to June?
Yeah.
I don't know. And, we got Ben here. We got Richie from Canucks With Guitars. And we have Steve from Boston, who's pretty much an honorary Canuck. Let's be honest.
Hey, my grandfather had dual citizenship. So
right. I've seen your chats. So, you got a good third Canucks in there, it seems. Beautiful.
Absolutely. All right, so hold on to your butt. I'm going to try and open this, I'm try and open the feed. Where'd you go? You were just there. You were just there. Do I have to refresh this? You're probably at the top of the list now because you're live.
Hey, I just got a notification we're live. How nice that YouTube let us know. Yeah, always a bonus. Let's see, who do we have in the chat here? We got Fender Guru tuning in from New Zealand. We got Charlie S. Hey, brother. Mr. BHB Jr. I think that's Bruce. Isn't that Bruce, Rich?
I think so. I'm not
positive. I think that's Bruce. We got Jason Wade, we got Paul Glover, we got Marsman, we got Absolute Mayhem, we got ET5150, Mitch Heyman, Frank C, Dry Heat 480, Adam EVH, Jim Guidry, R2R3 Locking Nut, and JJ's House of Jams himself. Awesome.
Hey, everyone.
Lots of folks jumping right in. Nice. And I believe I hear a dog in Brighton. As previous conversation, right, Steve?
No dog here.
Yeah.
Funny.
Well, we shoot for that Wayne's World quality on this channel, so
yeah, there you go.
We keep the bar low. Keep the bar low. Hey, we got John Parson. Hello, all from Wisconsin. Welcome, John. Dan Sullivan. Awesome.
Hey, Dan. How's it going?
Excuse me. Yeah, I'm glad everybody could tune in on this Sunday evening. Sorry if my voice sounds a little low tonight, guys. As most of the regulars in the chat know, Richie and I were gigging last night. The gig was a huge success, and we now have a residency at the Beaufort Pub.
Woohoo!
Nice.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they're booked through the end of the year, so we're hoping to hear something in early January or a cancellation, and we are available.
Is Stubby Blues again?
Yes. I got another 12-pack of Stubby Blues.
Nice.
Worth the extra bucket case. Just out of the Stubby beers.
Oh, totally.
So, Steve, you made it down to Summer Dam, did you not? Did I not see some quality
I was. I was at Summer Dam.
And
it was great. It was my first time going to Summer NAMM. It's definitely much smaller than Winter NAMM.
Right.
It's a little bit more laid back, a little more chill. But and Nashville isn't a very expensive town. I mean, even Anaheim is, I think, more expensive. For hotel and just everything in Winter NAMM is more expensive than Summer NAMM. But the only downside to Summer NAMM in Nashville is just it's so friggin' hot down there. It's just like ridiculously hot and steamy. But they keep everything super air conditioned, and let's face it, we're indoors most of the time, so it's not too bad.
Now,
but it's good. It's smaller dealers. It's not big giant. It's Winter NAMM definitely has all the big boys are there, and Summer NAMM is more like opportunity for some of the smaller vendors to to get their stuff up there.
Sure. And was Gibson doing like open houses and stuff at the factory? I saw a lot of video coming out of there.
Yeah, so they were running shuttles, I think, for people from the NAMM show, but I don't think it was I don't think they were public. If they were, it might have been on Saturday. They were doing public tours on Saturday. But I went on a day where the public wasn't at NAMM. So in the winter, there's no public day. In the summer, the Saturday is a public day. And
oh, cool.
Yeah, so we went on Friday, and it was just seemingly everybody else had badges on, so they were all NAMM people. You could tell the people who were public they didn't have badges, right? They get a handstand. So Friday was definitely, all that. And I think Samurai Guitarist and Tyler Larson, they went on Thursday. So, they were basically, if they saw somebody, like me or Tyler or them, they were offering. They were like, hey, if you want to go over to the factory and do a tour, we're all over it. And the guy was like just super accommodating about everything. It's funny because when I got over there at first, they were like, yeah, you're not shooting video. It's not
right.
Because everyone was just scared to allow anything. And then once I had done the tour, I basically said, well, I'm a YouTuber and I'm here to shoot video. And I had to drop a name, sent me over.
Right.
And they were like, okay, all right. You probably need to talk to Jim, right? Big Jim, right? Who's like a big wig, who can. And he came out and he was like, yeah, all right. And that's where I got those still photos and some of that footage from, was because he took me back in after that. And,
cool.
and let me go around. And he was better at, they felt more comfortable with him saying, yes, you can shoot this, and no, you can't shoot that. They probably have some proprietary processes that they don't want everybody to see. I don't know. It seemed like pretty straight up a guitar making factory. I don't know what would be proprietary. I mean, everybody sort of knows. I know Tone King did a video a couple of years ago. It looked identical to what it looks like now. So I don't think there was really any change in the factory in those couple of years. So, but it was way cool.
Nice.
It was just really interesting to go in there and go about. The place is large. It's a little confusing, and it's all broken down into different sections, whether you're painting or buffing or assembling or all that stuff just completely is all in these separate areas, and then it just sort of goes through a system, and the next thing you know, it's out the other side. I even went in the Plek room. They had a half dozen Plek machines in there.
Oh yeah.
Just one by one, they were just Plekking guitar after guitar after guitar. Ooh. Yeah, and then I think from there it goes to final setup, and they're doing all the assembly and all the final setup work, and then it was done. It was interesting. It was in many ways very old school. Like wrapping up the binding and stuff like that.
I know. Yeah, that's what I was thinking when I noticed that. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, no, I thought it was a great idea. Like, I'm sure they thought about, from a marketing standpoint, with all the news of Gibson in 2018, and let's be honest, the more or less slagging for the last 5 to 10 years of the company. Like, here we are, we're old school on this stuff. We do this, we do that. Check us out, and it's a great idea.
I actually think they were doing okay. I mean, there were a lot of rumbles about Gibson quality, but I think the beginning of the downfall was 2014 because they added that 2014 anniversary marker, inlay, front marker, and people are purists. They're like, I don't want a flag in the middle, I don't want that there, and I just want a regular trapezoid. And then 2015 was even worse because they changed the headstock and they went to a larger neck. They took away some choice on that,
right?
And that just angered people even more. And they had the robo tuners and all that, and again, it just.
I think it was 2013 was the year they put that 10 decibel boost micro switch instead of the second tone pot. Because I remember I was looking for a Les Paul at the time, Rich knows, but I was strictly a rhythm player, and I said all that's going to do is tick off my lead player if I hit that.
Yeah, and and it just fundamentally changes the look of the instrument when you have 3 knobs and a switch versus 4 knobs. As ridiculous as that sounds, people
it totally does though.
Right? Yeah, and you're looking at it and you're like, it doesn't look like the guitar I fell in love with. It looks like some dude is going to modify and hot rod his Les Paul, and he pulled one of the pots out and threw in some switch that he wanted to use, and it feels modded. It doesn't feel stock, and that's a bad place to be. Right? Because people want them stock. As weird as that sounds, they really do.
Yeah, don't change a thing.
Yeah, don't change a thing. I think that they're poised to make a big comeback. They're really narrowing, all their brands. They're getting rid of all the electronic stuff, and they're just going to focus on things like Kramer and Gibson and Epiphone and Dobro and was it Tiesco? They have a bunch of brands.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, Tobias, right? Is that what they are? Tobias, I forget now.
I think something like that.
Yeah, it begins with a T.
We got Showman Blues in the house.
What's up, Showman?
Says he's a fan of both of ours. And the great Vanzini, if I said that correct, longtime viewer of yours.
Yeah,
first time here on my channel.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Thanks everyone for tuning in. So, was there any surprises at Summer NAMM for you?
I don't,
because I know you went to Winter NAMM, you were out at Tolman, so you would have seen stuff that's come out since Winter NAMM, even in many ways.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff gets gets announced, like the players' strats, and it's like it already been a lot of stuff is just done to death, before it even got. Gibson was showing, and I think I had some photos in that little slideshow I did last night on my live show. They had their 2019 line out. So much like a car dealership, they sort of look ahead and they try to put their stuff out over the summer, rather than wait until, the NAMM, because if you want to sell the 2019s, you're always looking like forward thinking. So people, it's a weird thing. You don't want a 2019 model at the end of the year.
Right.
It's almost like a phone, right? You don't want to buy an iPhone in August.
Right.
Because one's coming right around the corner. So I think that's a way to keep their sales up. You make you switch your stuff over in the middle of the summer, and that way your line is fresh. Looking forward, the 2019 line is on the floor for Christmas 2018.
Right. Yeah, like I myself, I got out to GearFest a few weeks ago there, which was awesome. Bigger than I thought it would be. Definitely the amount of vendors that were there and stuff, and then. Rich and I, at the beginning of June, went to Music Fest, which was a smaller version of Gear Fest held at Cosmo Music north of Toronto. And it was funny because we were walking around, and I think it was about 2 hours in, I said to Rich, I'm like, we're getting treated really well here. And then by mid-afternoon, I'm like, we're the only YouTubers covering this event. For whatever reason, I realized we're the only people taking pictures, filming, stuff like that. So we ended up... Yeah, and as a result, we spent, almost an hour with Robert Keeley that day, just hanging out. Like, at one point, he wanted to leave to go over to the Electro Harmonics booth to talk to them. So he left Rich and I looking after the Keeley booth. We're just like, is this happening?
Right.
But that's the nice thing about smaller shows, in many ways.
Yeah, I ran it.
So, yeah.
Robert Keeley at Summer NAMM, he was there. And they came out with the new Aria, right? That's his new pedal. I think it's a compressor and an overdrive dual pedal. And we were shooting the breeze with him a little bit. He's a real good guy.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, super cool, dude.
I got a few of his pedals around here somewhere.
Casper Boo says, hi, Ben and Steve. Greetings from the UK. Hey, Casper. Good to see you. I actually just picked up a Keeley compressor at GearFest because they were blowing them out for $99.95.
Yeah,
and
those
they're pushing 300 Canadian with the exchange rate. So I was just like, yes.
Yeah, he makes some of the best compressors out there. He really is. His compressor game is on point.
Yeah. And then picked up the Kramer guitar at GearFest as well, which was kind of neat. One of a friend of mine in the YouTube community says, you're the only guy I know that goes to a 2018 guitar show and retail event and walk out with an 85 Kramer.
Yeah. They had a lot of vintage stuff at the Dallas Guitar Show, but they didn't really have any Kramers that I could see. I saw it's really almost all Fender and Gibson and things like that. There wasn't really a lot of off brands. Very traditional at the Dallas Guitar Show for sure. A lot of Tellys, a lot of Strats, a lot of Les Pauls, a lot of SGs. A lot of old acoustics and old Martins and stuff.
I'm surprised how many PV I saw at GearFest in the second-hand booth or the second-hand tent. A lot of PVs, yeah. And I've always great guitars. There was just always something about them. They looked a little off or something, but they're great playing guitars.
The HP2 I just played at Summer NAMM. That's the new EVH. What they call it, HP2. And it was great guitar. It's all those features. Short scale and You know, very, very comfy neck and just a
Mhm.
beautiful, if I remember correctly, a nice top on it, like a flame top,
Right.
carved top, if I remember correctly.
Right.
No,
And
it was nice.
coil tap too. They're the only ones with coil tap.
Yeah. I didn't really get a chance to check it out. I did play through the PV Invective, and I didn't care for it. I was having a real hard time getting it not to be so mid pushed, and I just have to remind myself that that amp is probably voiced for a very low tuned guitar, like a 7 string or an 8 string, or somebody tuning down to like drop A. And so when I'm playing it in like standard tuning, you know, it sounds bright. It sounds very mid pushed. So you can't take my word on the Invective, but I gotta say it's definitely not an amp for me. Um, I like the Hughes and Kettner much better. There's a whole bunch of amps. The Rev, God blows it away, especially the Dynamis. Just a much, or the 100p. The new 100p is really good. Even the Boss Katana and those solid state amps have a sound that I like better than what I was getting out of that Invective, which sounds bizarre considering how nice that Invective is in terms of like just being a really nice tube amp.
And Terry's GG&G says, hey, it's now the Steve from Canada show.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, so what? I was gonna say, yeah, you've become quite the fan of Hughes and Kettner over since GitCon last year.
You know, I never really played them, and then when we were at GitCon, I like a little bit of effects, and the Revs just don't have effects built in. They don't even have a lot of them don't even have reverb.
Right.
So it's you have to do outboard or something like that, or it's just too dry. I don't care for it. And so with the Grandmeister 40, I just went around and talked to different people there, and I wanted to use the Rev, but I wanted to get something with a little bit of reverb and delay on it. And with the Grandmeister 40, it was like a one-stop shop, right? So it's like you just you plug that thing in, you got reverb, you got delay, the thing sounds killer. It's got amazing crunch and lead and ultra tones. I mean, it's just a really, really good amp. And so that was sort of my go-to amp at GitCon, because it was a quantity I knew. I felt bad for them because we had the amp kept shutting off. We kept having technical difficulties. It kept shutting down, and we couldn't figure it out. And then Rev's amp kept switching channels like on its own, and they couldn't figure it out. And then it turns out it was a bad speaker cable, and it was getting a lot of we're lucky we didn't cook those amps, but they had a bad speaker cable. And once we changed that cable out, everything worked fine after that. So, and the Hughes and Kettner guys were like, "Oh, thank God!" It's like we're here at this event with all these YouTubers, and our amp is like having a problem, but it really didn't. It was not their fault, and the amp worked fine once they changed the cable. And so we sort of stayed in touch after that, and they sent me over the Grandmeister 40, which is right over my shoulder, right there.
Not the coolest part about those things, I swear.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, even if you don't like the sound of a Hughes and Kettner amp, they're awesome.
Yeah, I mean, they really do sound amazing, and my problem with it is, like everything, miking it up. But I finally got it going in through my reload unit, and I can just plug it through that. And what I really need is one of those amp peak switchers. That's what everybody's using right now, just to switch between amps, and that would make it a lot easier, because I could switch it out, or I got to get an aux or something like that, just so I have more than one. Although, you know what, I could probably use the cap door and just set that to like 8 ohms, and I'd be fine. But I'm officially out of inputs on my Focusrite, so so if it's not one thing, it's another, right? But basically, miking an amp is a lot harder than it looks, and I find that you play an amp and you're like, wow, that sounds so amazing. Then you hear back the audio from your mic and you're like, that sounds like garbage. That is not what I was hearing in the room. And then you're like, where am I going wrong? What am I doing wrong here? So a lot of times I'll use the reload box because it's a one-stop shop, but then you have to use the digital cab, and people are like, you're cheating, you're using the digital cab. So like one good thing about the Hughes and Kettner is it's got a red box out, and that's actually one of the best speaker emulators out there. It's like a low line out. and you can run it directly in and get it, a pretty good sound out of it like that. But again, people are going to be like, that's not what I'm buying it for. I'm buying it to run it through a speaker, and I want to know what it sounds like through the speaker. And unfortunately, I don't even have a Hughes and Kettner speaker here. I'm using a Panama speaker, which isn't a terrible speaker, but it's not a great speaker. I mean, we're not talking like Celestian greenbacks or creambacks, right? I mean, we're just talking, Panama speakers, which are not terrible. Don't get me wrong, but you wonder if that's a little bit of a the weakest link in the chain, right? For that sound. If plugging it through a Hughes and Kettner, it might sound a lot better. I can tell you this much. I played that through one of the Panama cabs, an extended range cab, and it did not sound good. And then I was like, oh man, what's wrong with this Hughes and Kettner amp? And then when I went to the NAMM show, we played it through their cab, and I was like, oh my God, this amp sounds so good. So clearly it was that cab, because when I was going through their cab, it sounded fantastic. And then when I got back here, I had two more Panama cabs, and the 212 cab, it actually sounded almost as good as the one at the NAMM show. Very, very similar.
Okay.
So yeah, Hughes and Kettner, I'm a fan. The thing's like a Swiss Army knife. It's got everything in it.
I knew about them early 90s, I want to say. Next town over, one of the music shops was a Hughes and Kettner dealer, and my cousin, because he owned a stereo chorus pedal, got matching 112 30-watt to Hughes and Kettner amps, and those things, man, they sounded great. And I couldn't believe doing pinch harmonics. It was the first time I could really do a pinch harmonic, and it just squealed, and I couldn't figure it out. And I'm like, oh, right, saturated tubes. Okay, I get it.
That actually does help a lot, a real lot. And when am I not pinching a harmonic? It's like, right, that's a shorter list. It really does that compression and that, like you say, that super saturation. It just brings all those harmonics out, and it just sounds really, really, kind of like the sound I was getting last night. I thought really that Strat through that rig last night sounded damn good, and of course the harmonics. Yeah, and the harmonics are coming out great. And again, it's that saturation that makes a difference.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, and it's not like those pickups are a super high output pickup or anything like that.
No, those are holy grails, and they're meant to be a 50s, a 50s style, not a 60s style. So it is definitely a little brighter, a little chimier than the I think like a 62 pickup, which probably has a bit more mid range to it, more like a Texas Special or something like that.
So what would you say is, I think I know, but your favorite model guitar, like style guitar?
Oh, Strat. I mean, it doesn't. I think like 80% of my collection is a Strat shape, right? Or maybe even more. Even like there's a Strat, but even like I think this is off cam. But even like this Ibanez, I mean. It's not a Strat, but it's definitely a Strat style. It's a double cutaway with extended horns, and that's a Strat style guitar. It's got a curve here, a little arm cut and a tummy cut and all that stuff. I mean, that's a straight up Strat style guitar. So between the Ibanez and the stuff, so here's a non-Ibanez I just got. It's a loaner. Calm down. I'm not keeping it, but this is a Framus. This is a gorgeous guitar.
Oh yeah,
that's really neat.
Yeah. That's a.
Yeah, I like how they do those cutaways on the tops.
Yeah, that's really unique. That's really sharp.
Yeah. I really like the look of it. And of course, they had sent me a guitar before called the Blank, which was designed in conjunction with Devin Townsend. And I have something I want to talk. I should mark that on my little sheet here. That guitar had a really large neck on it, right? Because it's meant to be like a vintage style guitar, and it's very plain. And even though it was a flame maple neck and all this stuff, just wasn't my style of guitar. This has a much nicer neck. I mean, just gorgeous. That's my style of neck. and I like the body a lot better. And you know, that blank was like $2,800, and this is like $3,000 for $200 more, right? You're getting this gorgeous flame maple top, and like, you know, and all these, instead of a bolt-on neck, it's a set neck, and like, and all this stuff. So I mean, or maybe it's $400 difference, maybe it's $2,600 versus $3,000. But still, I mean, they're not that far apart in price, and I just think this is light years beyond the blank in terms of my style of guitar. I know someone would look at this and say it's too ornate. I don't like the lines. I don't like the thickness of the body. And someone actually may like that blank, but I think when you're getting into over, and I talked about this one time, I think once you get over $2,000, people want exotic woods. They want flame maple. They want black Limda. They want something. I mean, give me something. But you know, a painted body with a standard neck, you know, that's a hard sell. I think at $2,600. But you know, there'll be someone out there to buy it, but I don't think it's me.
So Nick Beeman says, then I think Robert Baker has a guitar like that.
Yeah, he's got a few. He's got a Les Paul that looks very similar to that.
Yeah.
In his Les Paul, I actually played that when I was out at Summer NAMM.
And is it as unique as we've heard it's unique?
It weighs a ton.
Yeah.
It weighs a ton. It's like a boat anchor. It really is. It's enormous. I mean, it's a regular size Les Paul, but the weight on your shoulder, is like you've strapped on, a 40-pound weight over your shoulder. I mean, the thing is unbelievably heavy. I'm like, I don't know how you hold this thing up. And it's a 3-piece maple neck. It's not a mahogany neck. It's a maple neck on that. So, you know, it's a very different guitar than, what Gibson's putting out today. They're mostly using mahogany necks. And they're mostly weight relieving. I think I don't know, do they even make, is it the traditional non-weight relieved, or is it minimal weight relieved? Right.
Traditional is the fan shape weight, the holes weight relief, as opposed to the modern being where it's the fan shape.
Okay, right. So there's always
it's only signature series that are not weight relief anymore.
Right. It's right. Only the signatures, are non. It's a relic in that you can't really even get that anymore.
Right.
It's a moment in time. So one thing I wanted to mention, I don't know if you saw, but Devin Townsend did an interview lately. I think it was a couple of weeks ago. And they toured like for a year, and they went all over the world. And he says, I'm not even sure we broke even on that tour. And I was like,
just reading that interview last week, I think.
Yeah, right? Devin Townsend tours for a year, it doesn't break even? Yeah. I mean, that is a sad state. If that is true, he might have been exaggerating. I hope he was. If he wasn't, and I think he said, you know what? There's side things to that. In other words, yeah, you break even on the show, right? But your record sales go up and your merch sales or whatever, right? You have this sort of like effect that happens, right? The rising tide raises all boats. So you're like, even though this particular part, I'm just barely breaking even. Sure. I'm making a little bit more money, just
had we not had the merch sales and everything, we wouldn't have made any money on the tour, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what it sounded like,
scary,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was bleak. I was like, oh my God, that is such a bummer.
And it's not like someone of his stature is doing it a completely DIY, right? Like, I think the biggest person that really does it all themselves is like a Bonamassa, right? Where he does everything himself. He has his own label. He does.
There's nobody. I think there's nobody doing better out there than Buckethead, because he travels. He pays no other musicians. He travels extremely light. In other words, he just has like a computer, a backup computer, an amp, and a backup amp, right? I mean, that's literally his entire rig on stage. And he has his backing tracks, and he goes out there and he does his thing. And when I saw him at the, at the Wilbur Theater, that place was packed. I could not believe it that Buckethead, it seemingly sold the theater out.
Right.
So. And they're not all guitar enthusiasts either.
Which you would think it would be, right?
That's right, wouldn't you? But it wasn't. It wasn't. In fact, the people next to me were like, very, very yuppie. And they were like, have you ever seen, Buckethead before? And I said, I haven't. And they're like, oh, yeah, we've seen him a lot. We sort of found him like 8 years ago. And he's such an amazing musician and all this stuff. And it was just very, very interesting crowd. Very interesting crowd. A lot of parents, not parent, but like a dad with their son, both digging Buckethead and going to it. It was, I think of anyone, out there trying to make money with live music on the level, because he's what I would call middle level, right? He's not famous enough to sell at a stadium, but he is famous enough to sell at the Wilbur, right? So he's not playing like little clubs. He's playing halls, right? I mean, it's the Wilbur Theater. I mean, this isn't like some little club did. This isn't the Paradise Theater in Boston. So there's a pretty big venue. So he's sort of in that halfway purgatory, and I think that's where Devin Townsend is too, right? He's not selling out a 35,000 seater. He's selling out a 3,500 seater.
Right.
And you know what I'm saying? So it's this middle ground where you're making money, but maybe not quite enough because everything's just so damn expensive. When you're trying to travel, it's I found that depressing. I read that Devin Townsend article and I was like, this guy is busting his ass and he's barely breaking even.
Jeez. Yeah, we got Michael B in the house from the Boston area, and Cheddar Kung Pao has joined us. Welcome, gents.
Cheddar? I know his real name.
So do I. I met him at GearFest.
I met him at TGU.
There we go.
TGU.
And see, when I met him at GearFest, we talked about you, Steve. Yeah, no.
Oh.
No. Yeah, he's a great guy. And, I was really looking forward to meeting him. I'd met him, I think, in one of your chats, or Shane from In the Blues or something like that. And I thought, this guy seems like a cool cat. So found out we were both going to GearFest, and we happened to run into each other, and it's great. Ran into Robert Baker at GearFest as well, and that guy stood in the drizzle for half an hour talking to me and Mr. BHB, who joined me at GearFest. I thought that was really cool. Yeah, and we're when we're talking the usual, we talked gear, and then we talked YouTube, like one YouTuber to another, which I thought was really, really cool. Cheddar and I kind of did the same thing, and Cheddar and I have similar sized channels. But then when you're talking, if it's like I ran into you or something like that, and you're like, hey, you should really do this, this, and this on your vids. I was like, oh, wow, far out. Okay, cool, thanks. Yeah, very cool stuff. So, anything on the horizon as far as new gear? I know you've been pretty busy doing reviews and stuff like that this year.
Yeah. Well, I got a bunch of pedals. I got a little Tweety from Mad Professor, big Tweety from Mad Professor. I got a dual delay, dual blue delay from Mad Professor. I have a Carl Martin DC drive. Those all have to have videos made for them. My next video, or close to it, might be Bias Amp 2. They want me to do a video, and I just finally sorted out the technical difficulties on that. And Bias 2 is so much better than the first Bias. I'm looking around the room. What else do I have? I got to do a shootout of different ways to power pedal board. This is one of them. I'll probably do a better Grandmeister 40 video than the one I did at Tagoo, one that is a little bit more in depth than that one there. That was, sort of an on-site video, which is a little bit less involved because you can't, you're just in there for an hour. You have the room for an hour, and so you have to just, do it as quickly as you can.
Sure.
The Rev. Where I put that? But the Rev G3 pedal. I have one of those to do. What the hell else? Of course, the Framus.
Apparently, Frank C says the Viper review.
Yep, the Viper review, of course. The Boss Katana. And Orange wants to send me some amps to check out. So I think, they're loaners. So I think the sky's the limit if they're loaning me the amp,
Sure.
So I really like the Dark Terror. And I really like the Jim Root because that's based on the Dark. It's basically a Dark Terror. separate EQ instead of a rotary, a single tone knob.
Right.
But the dual dark is really cool as well. God, I'd love to get a dual dark over here. So I'm probably going to do some stuff, and they want me to do maybe some stuff with their Crush series, and it would be good maybe to do a shootout between like the Crush Pro, the Katana 100, right? So the Crush Pro is 120 watts, the Katana 100 is 100 watts, and the Viper is 100 watts. So three similarly wattage, I think you're talking 350 for the Katana. I want to say it's 450 for the Crush. Don't quote me on that. And they just dropped the price about a year ago on the Viper from $599 to $499. So they're all kind of in the same ballpark-ish. And certainly you could take the $150 discount on the Katana into, consideration when you're comparing the two. But I think they all sound good. I had the Viper fired up a couple of days ago, and I forgot how good that amp sounded. I was like, damn, this thing sounds really, really good.
Yeah, I picked up a VIP 2 a few months ago for a steal. Like, guy wanted, I think I paid $60 Canadian for it.
Yeah, that's real cheap.
He just wanted to get rid of it, and I was like, done. And I keep it in my office at work. I work alone, so between customers, I work retail. I have a rig at work, and I just play,
Yeah. The Katana. See, the Katana is a very different, and I think that maybe the Crush can't do it. See, the thing that the Viper can do that none of the others can do is it has a matching foot switch that's unbelievable, right? That fully integrates and ties into it and really changes it into a very different amp. So that really gives, I think, the PV, a bit of an edge. But it is, I think, of the three, the most expensive, but they're all solid state. And, of the three, I don't know how they do it, but and I don't know how this works, but Boss kept telling me that the Katana had a Class AB solid state power section, and that was what made all the difference, was that they figured out Class AB on solid state, and I was like, okay. But I guess Class D is mostly used for solid state.
Yeah, that's solid state power there.
I always think of solid state as Class D, so I don't know how they did it, but they seem to be able to make a Class AB, and it seems to take the edge off, right? It really it warms the amp up a lot. Makes a big difference. And on, I think, all three amps, I don't know about the Crush, but definitely the Viper and the Katana have computer editors that can be plugged in. I don't know if the Crush can do that, if it's USB or if it's digital, but the Crush might be a straight analog amp for all I know, with a digital effect section.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
The Great Vanzini asked if anyone has seen any good Spider reviews. I would say check out Glenn Fricker's channel.
Yeah, I was going to say, Glenn probably has the best review of the Spider out in the market.
Yeah. I saw his latest video on that. I'm fairly new to Glenn's channel. Like, I watch his videos as they come up and stuff, but I didn't realize I wasn't subscribed. And then I met up with him at Gear Fest, and he's like, "Oh, we should do something together sometime." I'm like, "Really? Okay, cool. Fellow Canuck, right on." And then so I subscribed to him later that day and stuff, and I saw this whole threat thing, and I was like, "What? Over a gear review? Are you kidding me?" But he played it up as only Glenn can. So
yeah. He you get that. I get that. I will say that it was worse like 3 or 4 years ago. It was much more, but I think in the last, say, 2 years, it's not so much anymore. It's definitely gotten quieter.
Yeah. I don't get any negative comments on any of my videos. I just get the random thumbs downs, which I always get a kick out of, because it's like, you didn't like it. Why didn't you like it? Right. Was it my camera? Was it me personally? Was it the product I'm reviewing? Like, give us a little info here, guys.
Yeah. It's always puzzling.
Yeah. Fortunately, Rich and I, we got to review some of those Fender Player Series we shot the videos the Saturday before they were released on the Tuesday, because I have a good friend who owns a few music stores, and he sponsors our channel, ardentsmusic.com, folks. And he's like, dude, you got to get in, before they're released. You can shoot some reviews for your YouTube channel. Maybe it'll help you out. And, we usually get anywhere from, after, say, a week's views, 150, 200 views on a video. And that's it, until you get those trickle-ins here and there. And I was checking it yesterday. We hit 1,200 views on that. And,
nice.
We released it the morning that they were released. And unreal, feedback. So, we're really happy about that. And great playing guitars. I was really shocked.
Yeah.
That Jaguar was fabulous.
Yeah. You played the Jag. I'm not a Strat guy at all, even though there's a Strat sitting here. I don't like Strats, but I loved the Strat I played.
Yeah, I like. I'm a big fan of the Strats. I recently found Tellys. I never thought I'd own a Telly, but I have a couple Tellys now. But for the longest time,
that's my thing.
I wasn't really. Yeah.
My dad was a Telly guy, so as he was a Telly guy, I inherited his Telly. So.
Right.
Yeah. Speaking of which, you haven't seen it, sir. Would you like to see a vintage Telly?
Sure.
I know the crowd always goes wild. Oh. Now, to show it off in true Steve from Boston Foreman, we always have to show the headstock first.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
And check out the wear on this fretboard.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you can tell he's from the generation where you owned one guitar, one amp, and you played that thing every night. And it does, in fact, have EMGs in it.
Classics.
Yes. Yes. Well, he did install them in around 84 or 85, but he played in so many bars that had such bad ground. And when you're playing clean through a Fender Twin,
well, 84, 85, that was the latest technology. That was the hot new product on the market back in 84.
He just said, I want to get rid of the 60 cycle hum. And then a buddy of his said, well, there's these new EMG pickups. We don't have them in Canada yet, but if you go over to this music store, and he found one in Syracuse, New York, so he drove across the border. And
sure,
because I'm more or less directly across Lake Ontario from Rochester, New York, so give you an idea geography-wise.
Okay.
So yeah, just cross over at the Thousand Islands. He drove down, bought the whole wiring kit and everything, pots, the whole shebang, and had a guy install it. I never took him out.
I like EMGs. I don't see why they get so much hate. I like them.
And especially those ones, they've never been a tone sucker. Rich can attest to that. I was gigging with that guitar a couple summers ago, and it sounded great.
Whether you like them or not, they're so consistent where I can't tell you how many times I've put a passive or I've have passive pickups in a guitar and just been like, oh, you know what, this doesn't really sound that great. And EMGs, you might say they're a little compressed or whatever, but they sound good. I remember I played, I want to say it was might have been, it was my Ibanez with the the scallop fingerboard, and it's got a set of EMGs in it. I might have been using it for live show, and I was using that front pickup, which is a single coil like an SA, and people were like, I can't believe how twangy that Ibanez sounds. I'm like, don't hate on the EMGs. They have a pretty good twang to them. In the right guitar, the right situation, I think they sound pretty good. But and they're noiseless, which is, like you said, solves a lot of problems for a lot of people.
Marsman says that Telly is why I subscribe, Ben. Thank you, Marsman. And Mike Ray says he digs Tellys. Hey, Mike, you snuck in here, along with JJ Collins snuck in here. Good to see you guys. And R2R3 Locky Nut says he has EMGs in 4 of his guitars. There we go.
I had an 81, 85 set in an Ibanez years ago, and I think I put an SA in the middle. The one in my scalloped Ibanez is 89. 89 is, I think, so I think it's an 85 in humbucker mode and an SA in single coil mode. And then that has 2 SAs in it. And I think that's all I have for EMGs right now. are those there? But they I just find them to be very consistent,
Right.
and they and very quiet. So I know something like I said, and when you're playing like Ozzy, I think they sound awesome. In fact, I remember putting them in an Ibanez, and we had one of the guys in the music store. I had a yellow RG 550. It's long gone, but a yellow RG 550, and he wanted a maple neck with a yellow painted headstock, and he really wanted that. He wanted it so bad, and he had an RG 760 in gunmetal gray, which had a black headstock, binding around the neck, and the shark tooth inlay, and it was a much more expensive guitar. It's retailed for like $300 or $400 more than the 550. The 760, but those necks were interchangeable. It was pretty much the same neck pocket. So he's like, let's switch out the necks, and we did. We strung it up down in his basement, and he had a little like crate amp, a little bench amp there, and we tuned it up, and we plugged it into that little crate amp. And I remember us playing some AC/DC riffs, and he goes, "I cannot believe how good those pickups sound." I'm like, right? I'm like, these EMGs, right? I go, I think they sound better than the stock Ibanez pickups and the EMGs. But I bought that guitar used, and it already had the EMGs in it. Mm-hmm. And then he had basically an EMG, and then he had the middle slot empty, and then another EMG, because you're really not supposed to mix active and passive, although people do it. You really shouldn't.
Right.
I just added a middle pickup, and that was good to go.
Nice.
I should have never sold that. I had it signed by Paul Gilbert.
Oof.
Oh, wow.
When I met him, he came to the store in '89. Then a couple of years later, I was all into funk and jazz, and I was like, this is like a shred guitar, and shred is dead, and I'll just dump this guitar. And I remember the guy who bought it was like, what the hell is this? I go, oh, it's signed by Paul Gilbert. He goes, does it wipe off? I go, oh yeah, it'll wipe right off. He goes, all right. And I guarantee you, he wiped that off like that night. with some polish, and because it was just right on the surface. I'm sure that came right off. And poor Paul. I wish I had that guitar.
That almost sounds like was that the line from High Fidelity? I got this Kenny Loggins album. I'll give you $5. It's signed. All right, I'll give you $4.
Right, exactly.
Nice. You have any questions there, Mr. Shanahan?
No, I'm just enjoying.
Just hanging out.
Stories.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I will say, I did come across you, Steve. I touched on it briefly off air. So a buddy of mine was looking at buying this very Gibson about 10 years ago. And so he was looking around online at reviews and stuff, find out what's all about it. And as you know, most guitar or gear reviews range from 3 to 7 minutes. And he comes across this one that's like 25 minutes long. So he's like, watches it, and he's like, oh, you got to check out this guy. I was like, wow, yeah, thorough 25-minute review. This would be awesome. And so I'm watching this video, and clearly Kiss had released an album a day or two earlier, because you had this riff stuck in your head, and you would, you'd talk a bit about the guitar, and then you'd start playing the riff and start talking about Kiss, and I'm like, well, when are we going to get onto the gear review here? But then I realized about 15 minutes in, you had said something, you looked at the camera, and you're like, right? And I'm nodding along going, yeah, right. And it was almost like a live stream that was a pre-recorded gear review. Yeah. And,
was that the double neck?
It was, I think it was
what I was talking about with Kiss. That could have been the double neck.
I thought it was your very first Les Paul Custom.
Oh, okay. Could have been. Could have been. Yeah. The yellow one there, the like yellow one. Yeah.
So, of course, after watching the video once or twice, then I go over to Richie's place the next day and be like, you got to check this guy out. He's hell of a player, and he's talking about these Gibsons and stuff. And I was hooked. And then, when you started going live, I was like, well, this is one of his reviews just live, essentially, because I always loved that. You had that personal element where it was more than just a gear review. I'm hanging out with Steve, and he's telling me about this new guitar he got.
Yeah. I've always tried to make it very informal like that. And it's funny because I still do a lot more pre-recorded than I do live shows, but people don't seem to see it. They only see the live shows. So like, I remember when you used to make pre-recorded videos and you didn't do live shows, and I'm like, literally this month I have 8 pre-recorded videos and 2 live shows. It's like a like a 4-to-1 ratio. But that's how it goes.
Yeah.
You can't argue with the internet.
yeah, exactly. I always get a kick out of the amount of times I'll get a text message on a Thursday. Hey, when are you going live next? I'm like, we've been doing a Thursday night show since January. Look, same thing I do every Thursday night, guys.
People are asking about my shirt. It's just Hosa. It's the old H for Hosa.
I met up with them at Gear Fest as well.
Yeah, they're really good guys. That's a company I started using. We were a Hosa dealer back in the late 80s. So we picked up Hosa in like, I want to say 87 or 88. And we were, maybe even before, I think 87, 88, we picked up Hosa. Man, we sold a lot of Hosa stuff. And I've been using them for years. So all of a sudden they burst onto the scene like, we're going to, make a big social media push. And it's really, I think been good for everybody because, we need cables, but not all the time, right? So it's sort of like a one-time upfront cost for them to send out a bunch of free cables to people, but it gets their name out there and they send out a bunch of shirts. And, I love it because, I was going to buy a Hosa cable anyway. Like that's the brand I tend to go to for everything, for everything but guitar cables. I wish they made a cloth braided guitar cable. For guitar, I like the cloth braided stuff because it doesn't get stuck on stuff, right? It doesn't. The rubber against rubber is always, binding. But with the cloth,
I just love the look of a cloth cable.
Yeah, for me, it's just practicality, and it's just an easier cable to work with when you're working with it all the time. A cable that's mounted in the back of my desk, I never touch. I plug it in once, and then it's good to go.
Right.
And so, like Hosa was super good with that to get my, my system up because those cables, they're not very expensive, but when you need, 12 of them, so suddenly the cost gets out of control, right? It's like, it goes from, not too bad to kind of pricey. So I love that they helped us out. I super appreciate it. They've been really good. They've been really good to a bunch of us.
Cheddar says shout out to Dylan from Hosa.
Yeah, Dylan from Hosa.
And the guys are saying is it Hoser, which is the Canadian division.
Right, Hoser. Exactly. Actually, that's
and
how
we got Lando in the house.
We would say that in Boston too, because we take ours away where they should be and we put them where they aren't. So you take the car to get a pizza. Right?
Yeah. And I didn't mention earlier, Jason Wade and Jamal are in the house as well. Good to see both of you. Awesome.
Yeah, good to see Jamal.
Yeah, Jamal's actually at home. He's not at work for once. He says, Steve, you're one of the first people I watched reviews of the Gibsons. Another channel was... Okay. I'm not even going to try to read that because my eyes aren't the best. Anyone know what happened to him? ESP Limited Guitar Lover. No. Don't know.
Yeah, he got... I do remember what happened to him.
Well, there we are.
Yeah. He got busted with stolen valor.
Oh.
He pretended to be like a vet, and turns out he wasn't.
Oh.
And he posted some picture and said like, "This is it." And someone pulled up. They said, "That's not you. This is this other photo," and he got busted for it. And I think that was the beginning of the end. And I think once he got busted, I mean, you could argue all day long about guitars. That's one thing. But I think the stolen valor was a bridge too far. And people are like,
yeah, no kidding.
And that was pretty much the end of that. And I think again, I haven't seen the guy in a couple of years. But if I remember correctly, his last video was sort of like, well, I accomplished everything I wanted to accomplish, and I bid you adieu. And that was the end of that.
Wow.
Oh, we got NASCAR Canuck just tuned in. That would be my cousin Doug. Good to see you. And we got Captain Smith himself, Michael Smith, tuning in. Wow, we got 36 people watching, Rich. That's like a new record. Thanks, Steve. I guess, you got to bring in the ringers, They all tuned in tonight. Nice. Very nice.
Oh, okay. So Terry's saying he made a bunch of promises of giveaways and never went through with a lot of them. Yeah, well, that's bogus.
Yeah.
That's bogus. That's always been my biggest nightmare because, like, I would have a giveaway for an amp, with Panama, and I would say, I don't want to fulfill this amp. I don't want to ship this amp out. You guys own the amps. You ship it. You have a whole shipping facility. Ship the amp out for me,
Exactly.
And they're like, no problem. And then you award someone, you send over the information, you say, make sure this amp gets out. A month later, the guy's like, where the hell's my amp? And I'm like, and you got to go back to them and say, guys, and then of course they do eventually, but it's nerve-wracking because I'm not fulfilling it myself.
Right.
Because that's the deal I cut. I don't want to fulfill it. I don't want to ship your amp out.
And in case I missed Zach Thong earlier, good to see you. He's just up the road from us in Oshawa, Ontario. Casper Boo, time to hit the sack, guys. Thank you. Been great hanging out. Enjoy the rest of the show. Cheers and good night to you all. Yeah, it's pushing 2 a.m. in the UK. So
yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in, Casper. That's awesome. I know I get a lot of comments from Casper on my videos because of the time difference, I missed another live show. I'm like, well, dude, it was like, 3 or 4 in the morning when I decided to go live. I get it. Let's see here. Scroll up in the chat, Dan, for the name that we were talking about. I think he's watching a slightly delayed. Excuse me. Or there we go. Showman just mentioned it. There you go. Dan and Sullivan and I had quite the conversation. Man, we were texting back and forth about 2 or 3 hours today. It was great. He's up in Kirkland Lake area of Ontario, Northern Ontario. And he's got a new band. And they're, we were talking back and forth, giving a little advice here and there. As I said to him, I only got into gigging in bands in the last 5 or 6 years. But in that time, I think I've done the better part of 200 shows. So what knowledge I can pass along. Yeah, I was really busy a few years ago. So. And then Richie and I, when we first got together, he was reforming a band, and I had joined, and it seemed like we were playing every weekend for months on end.
That was great. The busiest summer I've ever had with that. It was fun. It was a blast. But yeah, we were hectic.
Yeah, classic rock music with a female singer playing a lot of private parties. They always feed you free beer and a nice paycheck because they're happy that someone didn't just plug in an iPod.
So Absolute Mayhem is asking, is there anything on my gear wish list? Yeah, I want a GT1000 by Boss. That was probably, and that answers your earlier question. Was there any piece of gear that really wowed me and knocked me out at Summer NAMM? And I'm remembering that was it. That GT1000 sounded freaking awesome. In fact, I saw a guy do a little live demo of it, and he was running through he had a bank of patches set up to go through his backing track, and he was running straight into the PA system, and that thing sounded so freaking good, like an Axe Effects, right? Just got the full-on cab emulation and everything. Or you can run it into your amp. You don't have to go straight out, but you could technically just run that because it's a full-on preamp. It does not. It's not just an effects pedal. It is a preamp.
I mean, like the Helix system in that respect.
Very much like the Helix, exactly. They're $999. They're $1,000, so they're competitively priced. Sure. It's it's a foot pedal configuration. It's not a rack. It's a foot pedal, like an AX8, and from Fractal. But I was just blown away, and it has this new AIRD, which is like something impulse response something. Right? So, impulse response is in the name there somewhere, but it's basically a way to emulate the cabs, incredibly accurately. And that dude was playing through some of those patches. I was like, that sounds as good as a lot of the stuff I've heard out of the Fractal audio. Now, granted, the new Fractal, I'm sure, is like light years beyond, but I haven't heard the new Fractal, right? I've only heard like the last Fractal, and it really, the last Axe FX, like say 2 Ultra. And I swear to God, man, that thing, I was like, damn, that sounds good. But that's just a testament to processing power. Every year that goes by, DSPs just get better and better. All of a sudden, a new DSP comes out, and someone harnesses it, and that's why you're seeing a new Axe FX out, because, and if you look at their summary for the product, they're showing like, the various strengths of each processing system for all of their prior products. And it's a huge increase when you get to the latest Axe FX. And the same thing's going on with something like that GT1000, right? It's like they're getting better and better. And you're talking like double or triple the power for like half the money. And all of a sudden, you're making a product for $1,000 that sounds unbelievable. So that was probably the most impressive product. And the product that I would love to get one down here. I got to talk to the guys over at Boss Roland, because even if it's just a loaner, I'd be happy to check it out.
Awesome. Michael Smith asks, what musician made you want to pick up a guitar?
Oh, that's easy. When I was a kid, there was I gotta remember, I started when I was 6. All right. So I'm pretty young when I started playing guitar, and I took lessons until I was 10 years old, and then I took like a couple of years off from lessons and just sort of noodled around. I didn't really even play a ton of guitar in that time. I did more like sports and stuff. And then when I turned 14, it became cool again to play guitar, and I went back and did it. But when I was 5 years old, that's 1971. The biggest show on TV was Hee Haw, and Roy Clark, and who's the other guy?
Buck Owens?
Yeah, Buck Owens and one other guy. No, Buck Owens. It might have been, no. There's one other guy, Jerry Reed.
Oh, yeah.
Right, Jerry Reed.
Yeah.
But really, it was Roy Clark, just because he had such a friendly face, right? He's a big...
Roy Clark was actually the first concert I ever went to.
Really?
Yeah, my dad was... Roy was playing Next Town Over, as usual thing.
Yeah.
And my dad was president of the local musicians union chapter at the time.
Sure.
And we're talking the late 80s, and everybody was union back in the day. So of course we knew about it. Another board member of the union, his daughter was opening for Roy, and so they got tickets, and they had an extra ticket, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to go?" And I had just got into guitar playing, but again, I knew enough that, and I grew up with my dad playing country music. And as much as I loved the Sunset Strip in the late 80s and the shred scene, I knew that those pickers could pick like nobody else. So I thought, if nothing else, I'm going to see some serious picking tonight. And we were sitting like 4th row or something crazy like that. And I was just drooling over Roy Clark all night. Yeah, amazing monster player.
Well, it seemed like, again, when you're 5 years old, right? Because remember, I started when I'm 6, right? So I'm like 5, 6 years old. I'm watching a lot of TV. And the one thing you realize is that not everyone can play a musical instrument. It's like the weirdest thing. So it's like you're watching people play baseball, and we can throw a ball, and you can hit a ball with a baseball bat. You might not be a professional athlete, but that skill wasn't beyond the capability of my parents, right?
Right.
They could play wiffle ball. They could play baseball. They could ride a bike. There was all these things that seemingly everyone could do. And I was like, okay, well, show me how to play guitar. Oh, we can't play guitar. Right. And that was just the weirdest thing, that something seemed to be beyond the reach of the average person. Right. And or and other things the average person could just do, like throw and catch a baseball, which when you're that little, like those are all equal skills, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the skill necessary to play guitar is the same skill necessary to throw a baseball, right? As far as you're concerned in those days. So that was probably somewhat of the reason why I was sort of drawn to it, because in some ways it made you special.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Whereas for me, it was, in many ways, it's like the son of a bricklayer becomes a bricklayer. I literally grew up in the music business as I think most of my viewers know now. Actually, on Father's Day this year, Steve, I actually had my dad on for a hangout, and I had him talk about gigging back in the day, and he's going to be 71 in a couple of weeks. So definitely from that different generation, like we were talking about, one guitar, one amp, and just talking about stuff back in the day, and having worked in the business side of music, and I'm still getting hits on that video. Amazing stuff. Was it Rich? We said you've never laughed so much and cried so much in one video, because it's a very emotional video.
It's great.
It sort of just shows you too the change in like purchasing power and how manufacturing has just come such a long way. Because when I was a kid, I just remember things were relatively expensive. Like if you wanted a nice guitar, it was a few hundred. The first guitar my parents bought me, I want to say, was that Aria, like ES335, and I want to say we paid. I don't think it was $150. I think we paid $75 for it. But to put that in context, we were paying $75 a month in rent for that apartment. Right. That was our monthly rent. Yeah. So, it's like if you dropped in 1971. $150 on a guitar, that was 2 months rent for a lot of people. Yep. I mean, that's a ridiculous, which it sounds like ridiculous today when rents are $2,000 a month, but yeah.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, he paid what, $300 for that Telecaster new, and that $300 in 1967. That, like you said, that was a lot of money.
Yeah. You could buy a gallon of gas for like 27 cents, right?
Right.
It'd be 23 cents. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. But that was a, quote unquote professional quality instrument, and you only needed one, and that was it. Yeah.
Right.
Let's see. My cousin says nobody's seen me throw a baseball. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Great Vanzini says he's going to watch that. You'll enjoy it, man. You will enjoy it. Zach Thong, I subscribe to you, Ben, because you're a cool dude. I subscribe to Steve because he's the man. Well, there we are.
Thanks, Zach.
Very nice. Let's see. Great Vanzini says also, my first frameless bass in the 60s was like 150 used. Whereas, see, the only exposure we ever had to frameless, I have a parlor-sized frameless acoustic that I used to drag around in the backyard as a 5-year-old because they were a Sears guitar for us. And then when I saw GetCon last year and all these multi-$1,000 framelesses, I'm like, what? Huh? I thought they were a cheap company back in the day, but man, they make some beautiful stuff. I will say that.
Yeah, really high end now. Really nice.
Yeah, that's what was throwing me off. Like, watching the factory tour, and they're like, oh, we've always done things this way. And I'm like, no, not really, folks. It says made in West Germany, but, that's how old my stuff is. It's made in West Germany. So to our younger viewers. So look up your history books.
Yeah. Framus was an East Germany company, right? They were on the east side.
Yeah. But they somehow had a manufacturing plant in Bavaria. And,
okay. Right.
Yeah.
Unless they moved to the east. But I know when we went to their factory, we were, 2 kilometers from the Czech border.
Right.
So, we were right there.
Well, that would make sense too if the family had moved to the west, say post World War II, and then set up shop until the wall came down, and then moved back to a more traditional area.
Yeah.
I can see that. That makes sense. I'm sure there's a lot of Germans that did that. I don't know how we got into German history, but there we are, folks.
Well, Framus.
Yeah.
Famous Warwick.
There we go. Yeah.
All right, gang. It's been a slice, but I gotta duck out.
Alrighty. Well, we're gonna wrap things up here, anyways, Rich. So.
All right. I'll stick around.
Yeah. So, give me a sec here. I realize, we're after 9 o'clock, and Steve's got his family coming home soon. So, I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. This has been awesome. Wow, we got 35 people watching. If you're new to the channel, give us a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. We'll thank our channel sponsors, Arden's Music and Renofin.ca, custom built guitars. Great stuff. And want to thank Rich for joining us. Definitely Steve, thank you so much for doing this. Again, I know you've seen me in your chats for years, so it's kind of neat to do this.
Absolutely.
You're more than welcome back anytime.
Sure.
For fun stuff for sure. Yeah, again, thank you everyone in the chat. We got some links down below of some other cool channels, and thanks everyone for tuning in. It's been a blast, talking gear. That's what we do, right? So till next time, folks, make sure to hold those doors open for each other. Let that guy in ahead of you in traffic. You do good things like that, and good things will happen to you. So look forward the big show with Rich and me Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, 1 a.m. in the UK, and 3 p.m. in Hawaii.